Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. Now let's talk about another important movement in the history of India's struggle for independence, and this is the civil disobedience movement. The timeline here is from 1930 to 1931. Now students, before this we have learnt about various other movements, revolutionary associations, early and later revolutionary movements and so on. But when we are talking about Gandhiji as a mass leader, you have learnt about some of the important movements that were carried out under his leadership. For example, the Rolex Satyagraha, followed by the non-cooperation movement, right? Then here we are talking about the civil disobedience movement. We all know that it was after 1919 that under the leadership of Gandhiji, we see that it became a mass movement. People from different areas, despite their differences, despite the fact that from which communities they belonged, everyone participated in these movements. But we also have learned one thing, that somehow due to the misunderstanding, misconception of the idea that Gandhiji had introduced, the idea of Satyagraha that he used to follow, it was not understood by a lot of people who resorted to violence, and because of which these movements were called off. Right, students? Now let us talk about the civil disobedience movement here that started in 1930. Now if you remember, before this, we have talked about the Lahore session that happened in the year 1929 and the resolution for Purna Swaraj. Now, this is very important point that you really can't miss. Okay. So, the resolution for complete independence or Purna Swaraj was taken here at this session that took place in Lahore. Okay. Now, after this, what happened? Gandhiji, after giving a lot of thought, he sent a letter to the then Viceroy of India, whose name was Lord Irwin. Okay? So, he sent a letter stating 11 demands, right? 11 demands to Lord Irwin, which included a lot of things, but the most important one was the abolition of salt tax. Now here students, this point is really important for us. Now what was happening here? We see that Gandhiji had stated 11 demands, but for the country and for him as well, the abolition of salt tax was the most important demand. Now why do you think salt was a powerful symbol for Gandhiji that he decided that based on this, he is going to launch the civil disobedience movement, another Satyagraha movement, under which he said that if the government is not going to abolish the salt tax, then they are going to launch the civil disobedience movement where they are going to defy the salt law. Now here students, what do we understand by the salt tax, or what do we understand by the whole idea of abolition of salt tax? Let us try to understand. And also let us try to understand why was salt a powerful symbol for our country at that time. Now every day you eat salt, right? You consume salt in the food. Therefore we can say that it is an important component for our food, right students? Without salt, the food is going to taste tasteless, right? It is not going to have any taste. So therefore, salt was something that was consumed by everyone, be it the rich person, be it the poor person. And Gandhiji knew that this was the most exploitative measure that the British government could ever take, right? Imposing salt tax. Now people, they had to give a large amount of money in order to buy the salt, right? They had no monopoly over it. People who are consuming salt every day, now they had to pay tax over it. Okay, they had no right to make salt, manufacture salt. The whole monopoly of salt was in the hands of British government. So therefore, according to Gandhiji, salt was a powerful symbol in order to unite the nation. Because whether it is a Hindu or it is a Muslim or Sikhs or anyone, everyone was consuming salt, right? So it could become a powerful symbol to stabilize the unity that was now diminishing somewhere. Okay, students? Here also another important point is that people, they had to pay a lot of tax on salt. So everyone would understand this emotion and would join Gandhiji in this movement. So therefore, he emphasized on the abolition of salt tax, and he also said that if Lord Irwin is not going to approve or fulfill the demands, then Gandhiji was going to begin the Dandi March, the salt satyagraha as we call it today. Now students, why are we calling it Dandi March here? Have you any idea? If not, we will understand why we are calling it Dandi March. Because Gandhiji, he started his march on foot from Sabarmati Ashram, and the salt law was broken at Dandi. Okay, the coastal region here in Gujarat. Now, let us try to understand it. Now, Lord Irwin, he had refused to fulfill the demands. Gandhiji, like he told Lord Irwin, he began the Dandi March. Let us try to understand, learn more about the salt satyagraha or the civil disobedience as we call it. So, Gandhiji, he started the march with 78 followers on foot from the Sabarmati Ashram. Now, do you remember the Sabarmati Ashram, students? Yes. When we were talking about the emergence of Gandhiji, we learned that Sabarmati Ashram was established by him. Where? In Ahmedabad. Okay. So, from Ahmedabad, we see that Gandhiji, he started this march from Sabarmati Ashram on March 12, not 13, 12, for Dandi to break the salt law. Okay. This is the place where the salt law was broken. Okay. So, the distance from Ahmedabad to Dandi was covered in 24 days. Now, students, approx 240 miles. Okay. So, Gandhiji, he had covered approx 240 miles on foot from Ahmedabad to Dandi in 24 days. So, approximately 10 miles per day. Okay, he used to walk, and he started with 78 followers. Okay, students, but here what do we see? He started with 78 people, but on the way, many more people, be it men, women, children, everyone joined Gandhiji on this cause, and they supported him in the civil disobedience movement, right? They saw him as their leader, and they decided to go and walk with him and support him in this march. So it was finally on April 6, 1930 that Gandhiji officially broke the salt law at Dandi by manufacturing it. So he picked up the salt, and through the evaporation of sea, the salt was formed. Now this is the process that you must have learnt in science and also based on the common sense, right? So he picked up the salt. This is how he manufactured the salt. He defied the salt law that was existing there, and it was introduced by the British government. The salt monopoly that the British government had, now it was officially broken by Gandhiji through this salt satyagraha or civil disobedience movement. It was done on 6th April 1930. Okay. Now, afterwards we see that when Gandhiji, he officially broke the salt law at Dandi, as you can see, this image is a very powerful image, students. Here we are talking about the civil disobedience movement, right? So Gandhiji, he is picking up the salt in order to defy the whole salt law, right? And elsewhere we see that many other leaders such as Sarojini Naidu, C. Rajgopalachari, many important leaders, many other leaders in South India, in North India, West, east, everyone participated in the civil disobedience movement. They also marched towards the sea of the coast, anywhere where it was available, and they decided to break the salt law. So this became a very powerful movement. But again, we see that many other leaders were arrested during this period when the government saw that here Gandhiji, along with many important leaders, they are breaking the salt law and they are posing a threat to the British government. So therefore, again they decided to arrest all these important leaders. So followers of Gandhiji, they boycotted the foreign goods, lit bonfires, picketed liquor shops, they burned the liquor shops, they destroyed the shops, they lit the bonfires in order to burn the foreign clothes, and so on. Oh, these were the measures that were followed. As a result, all top leaders, they were arrested by the British government, like I told you. By the beginning of 1931, 1,000 people were jailed and 67 newspapers were banned. Now, these were the repressive measures taken by the British government. By taking all the leaders, by arresting all the leaders and putting them in jail so that the whole movement would shut down, right? Because people, they do not have any leader to follow. So what are they going to do? So eventually the British government thought that the movement would shut down. But here, is it happening? Let us try to see. Here we see that at different places, such as in Peshawar, the Indian soldiers, they refused to fire at the demonstrators. Yes, students. In Sholapur, that is Maharashtra, martial law had been imposed to curb mass demonstrations. Here, martial law, it means that the law in which people are not allowed to gather in crowds, right? So basically it was to stop, it was to curb the mass demonstrations. In Chittagong, revolutionaries, they captured the armory. So basically we are seeing how at different places the civil disobedience movement, it had started and how it was taking different turn at various places. Now here you see at some places it was taking the violent turn here, right? In this image, you can see, like I told you, some women leaders also, they participated. In fact, when we are talking about the civil disobedience movement, we see that women participated in large numbers, right? So here, Sarojini Naidu with Gandhiji, okay, along with some other important leaders and followers of Gandhiji in the salt satyagraha, okay.